Hello, and welcome back to the Oldie Mood Dave channel for another live standard game. My name is John, this is my partner Jay, and Jay, what are we looking at today?
We got standard. On the left, we've got Scott, blue-white tempo, blue-white good stuff, basically. Jack on the right, playing mono-red aggro, or burn.
Mono-red aggro is the very much a staple archetype in nearly every format in Magic.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be a good format unless you can have some sort of mono-red deck, you know, that can steal some games here and there.
And, you know, it's just one of those things, right? It's a deck that can steal a game, it's very quick. You know, if mono-red's going first, they're happy enough already just going first, right? But blue or Azorius tempo, we might be looking at cards like Get Lost, which is a standard all-star removal in white. There's just a lot of ways for blue and white that can kind of deal with aggressive strategies quite well.
Yeah, I agree. Things that blue-white can do, which is very hard for aggressive strategies to deal with, is gain life. I suspect that there will be a Denic or two in the sideboard. We know that there are some Wandering Emperors in the main board. Oh, and very aggressive from the mono-red player, choosing to go face with the Play with Fire instead of taking out the Spyglass Siren.
It's interesting. So mono-red in this current standard do have access to quite a few 1-drops, but seems to be quite happy with the Play with Fire start. And
to be fair, play with Fire is like a £2 card, uncommon, so probably one of the most expensive cards in the deck.
That's true. And 4 damage already, and quite quickly passed back to the mono-red player. So Jack must be feeling pretty good in this position, but he must be also quite wary of, well, didn't expect loyalty, but there was also very much a potential for there to be counterspell magic up. We know that, especially in Murders from Karlov Manor, there is a new counterspell in Azorius, which has also garnered a lot of attention.
Yes, although Mirex cannot tap for blue or white on your opponent's turn, right?
No.
So No More Lies was not live that turn. So I think Jack did a good job of sort of thinking there might be a flash creature, so I'm not going to play anything pre-combat to hopefully get value out of Feldon, which I think is good, considering that they had a Squee in their hand, and Squee would have been a very juicy thing to play.
Yeah, but we do have Kamano on 2, and a Phoenix Chick coming in with a Kamano trigger on the stack. Does it resolve? It does resolve. So we got a 2-power Chick with haste and flying, 4 damage coming in, and a Malcolm coming in to block the Phoenix Chick in this position.
That's a bit... Ooh, it feels like blue-white... I mean, I guess they are down to 13, but it does feel like blue-white is sort of playing very defensively and not advancing their own game plan, which might come back to bite them in the end.
It's possible, but we also got to recognize that the blue-white tempo deck... Ooh.
So here we see Tishana's Tidebinder counter the flip of the Kumano.
Yeah, which means that it doesn't come back as a creature, and we are seeing. Is there something wrong with the phone?
No, this is incredible. Yeah, I think there's something wrong with the life totals. Hopefully they'll get that fixed. So Spyglass Siren trading with a Squee 1/1 Goblin. That's not very good.
No, and I think this kind of sort of harkens back to. So Azorius was basically struggling for colors. They had the white-blue source turn 1, and then nothing but Mirexes in what could have been fairly important turns. So it might have just opened up mono-red to just kind of play the way they're playing. You know, they're playing around Make Disappear quite well by attacking, forcing other interactions, and then they would play the creatures afterwards when they are safe. It doesn't seem like a control list as such, so we might not be expecting things like board wipes in this particular style of deck as well.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. Scott has just gotten incredibly mana flooded. And he managed to draw 3 of the Mirexes, and Mirex is one of the worst cards when you're struggling for colors, and these mites aren't very good against an aggressive strategy like Mono Red. I think Jack has just gotten this game, especially with that lightning strike there.
Yeah, down to 5 and scoop it up right there. So, very aggressive strategy. Also, taking note, quite an unfortunate opener for Scott here. And he revealed like how many non-land cards could he have had. But
yeah, so post sideboard, we're probably going to see some removal, some counters, some things like that to sort of bring in. I do think that Scott could have played a little bit less scared. So it wouldn't have made him win.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, right? The player was just able to play turn after turn, just more damage, more threats on the board, and that nice interaction with Kamano, yes, may have saved them 2 damage, kind of acted as removal in that instance, but the amount of land Scott was drawing, it might just not happen for him.
Yeah, Tidebinder looked really good there. It was a neat 2-for-1. It does look like Scott is bringing in negates. I'm not sure how much I like negates. It looked like they took out, was that Warden? And it looked like they did take out some Tidebinders. Yeah, Warden of the
Inner Sky?
Yeah, that's the one that taps to scry and put counters on itself. It looks like Scott's deck is pulling in a few different directions, I'm going to be honest. It looks like it's kind of like a Convoke, tap a load of weenie guys, but then also have counters and flash creatures. It could work out, but usually, you kind of want your deck to have one solid game plan rather than being pulled in these 2 different directions.
And quite interesting. Did the red deck mulligan? No, he did not. I thought he mulligan earlier, but they were just sideboarding. And a turn 1 Mono Swift Spear to open up gates.
Yes, a tale as old as time. Honestly, I know Kamanu has now taken the spot as the premier red 1-drop, but Swift Spear is just so good.
Yeah. Oh, and there is the No More Lies making an appearance for the first time this match.
Yeah, it looks like they drew another No More Lies here, so it's likely they play a 1-drop. We see a Spyglass Siren, and then they'll probably No More Lies whatever Mono Red plays next turn.
Yeah. Now, Mono Red does play quite a few sort of cheap cards, so it's possible that rather than play a 3-drop, there could be like a 2-drop and a 1-drop, a 1-drop and a 2-drop.
I believe that was a Eurobrask's Forge, was that? No, a Godric? Can you see? I think that was a Eurobrask's Forge. A very good card in a grindy matchup that goes a little bit longer. Very good target for No More Lies. I think Jack just kind of thought, if I get this down, I've won the game. And he gets the Prowess Trigger out off it.
Yeah. To be fair, the Prowess Trigger not irrelevant here. And this is one of the things where Swift Spear is just quite an iconic burn card in multiple formats, especially with the introduction into the standard format with Monstrous Rage, giving that permanent trample effect on Swift Spear on any Prowess creature just makes it a threat on different levels. And we see another Urbrass Forge coming down. Oh, and Tishana.
So Tishana has looked really good in these last 2 games. I mean, stifling the Eurobrass Forge, it does mean that Tishana is now no longer really able to block that much because, once it dies, Eurobrass Forge is going to be active again. But, maybe this will just be a race. Maybe Tishana's going to get in for 3 every turn. Yeah. And we're going to see a sort of tempo-y race from the blue-white player.
I mean, I would feel quite good in this position as the Azorius player. Still at 14 life, quite a few turns in, and Mono Red tends to run out of gas around this part of the game.
Yeah, it does look like Mono Red has flooded a little bit, more lands than they would want. It does look like they've got a Witch Stalker's Frenzy in their hand, so they could just choose to take out the Tidebinder now to activate the Eurobrass Forge, but instead they're going to channel Sockins and wow. So good there.
And double Tidebinder and keeping the Swift Spear back, because sort of basically telling Scott Jack does not have a way to make this would be a threat. And suddenly, Azorius tempo on the beatdown strategy now, and this is where I was talking about, where sort of the gas is kind of gone. Quite typically, Mono Red used to play exile effects, sort of like Ren's Resolve, but I believe they've been taken out in favor of other type of more damage-based effects.
Yeah, I would say here there is the potential for a blowout. I do think that Scott does have to attack, otherwise he's losing. But if Jack has a play with fire or something, a Witch Stalk is... So Jack is now taking out both the Tishana's Tidebinders, so the biggest damage, taking 3, and gets the Eurogress Forge back. So a huge swing in tempo there from Jack, and brilliantly not attacking with the Swift Spear to sort of say, I don't need to push through damage, I need to stop my opponent from pushing through damage.
Yeah, and this could be a potential turning point, but a lot of lands coming in, and so
a Shivan Devastator, a 5/5 haste dragon. What an incredible card.
It's Fireball on a stick, and the best thing about a Fireball on a stick, sticks around. So
yeah, it sort of reminds me, right now in this state, it sort of reminds me of Thundermaw Hellkite, one of my favorite cards. A 5/5 haste flyer is always going to get the game done pretty nicely. Now the question is, can Scott draw into a Get Lost or removal spell?
He might do. He did go through quite a few cards. We did see another No More Lies going into the bin there. So Scott is kind of looking for a removal spell to deal with the Shivan Drake. We do see like an Iganjo, but obviously only 4 damage with it. It's not big enough to deal with the Drake.
I mean, Iganjo plus a Spyglass Siren or Iganjo plus a Restless Anchorage could deal with the Shivan Devastator, and I believe that Mono Red is Hellbent. However, Blue-White does not have the most time, because that Eurogress Forge, eventually, it's just going to be too much, and it's just going to win the game on its own.
Yeah. A card I don't think does exist in this particular list would have been March, the White March from Kamigawa.
Oh yes, White March, very good against Shivan Devastator because its mana value is only 1.
Yeah, so it's potentially that could have been an answer in this position. Also an answer to Urbrask Forge, as it also exiled artifacts. But,
yes, you are correct. So we see 2 Iganjos, which are dead cards at the moment, and then we also see an Elspeth Smite, which deals 3 damage to target attacking or blocking creature. So it looks like Scott is looking to trade his Spyglass Siren in plus the Smite to take out the big dragon.
Exactly 5 damage. Does Jack have an answer here?
Yeah, if Jack has a play with fire or something for the Spyglass Siren, this would be another blowout. And you can see Scott just inch it towards the graveyard. He knows he doesn't have anything.
Oh dear. But Urbrask Forge still ticking along, still dealing that damage. It might not be too far off.
Yeah, I mean, really here, Scott kind of just wants to draw another Tishana's Tidebinder. Oh, and he did! Oh my god!
Lord. That is huge.
What's the top deck? So Tishana's Tidebinder will stop the Eurogras Forge when it triggers. You just pray Jack doesn't have removal. Play with fire.
Yeah. So the removal does happen, but it is still counted for this turn at least. So it doesn't gain the counter, doesn't get any bigger. So it just gives Scott one more turn to kind of see if he can deal with it. And the Big Bird beatdown happening.
So I think Scott is thinking now whether he attacks. I think he does attack, surely. I think he might be able to raise. He's got 2 Iganjos in his hand. So he deals 2 damage this turn, opponent down to 6. Iganjos deals 2 damage next turn, has another Restless Anchorage. Yes, right now he will win the race.
As it currently stands. So
yes.
So he's just sort of presenting that Iganjo is going to happen.
Yeah, so Jack needs anything to change the maths on this. A removal spell, a burn spell, a creature, anything like that.
Oh.
an Emperor is quite good here, especially because you can just create 3 Samurais over 3 turns to deal with the Urabrass Forge.
You could, but the Urabrass Forge does have trample. I think it'd be more beneficial just to gain the life in this position, possibly.
True. Especially down to 3, yeah.
Mm.
So could they have gained life there?
I believe there was a misclicking going on. So Scott was on 6, while Jack was on 6 as
I
well.
think he did the wrong life total. I see.
Yeah.
So you're right. He does choose to exile to gain the 2 life.
And with 2 anchorages live. Okay.
Yeah. Play with fire doesn't really do anything. So realistically, if Jack has nothing, Mono Red has won this game. Sorry. If Jack has nothing, Blue-White Tempo has won this game.
Yeah. Oh. Okay.
I think that was a fantastic game, and it showed the strength of Blue-White Tempo, sort of a race whilst controlling the board.
And now we are on to game 3. So a bit more familiar with what's going on in each other's decks now. It was quite quick the first game, so we only had like an idea, but now we get sort of the full picture of this Azorius Tempo deck. And Tishana's Tidebinder was very much the MVP of game 2.
I completely agree with you. I mean, Urabrass Forge is such a good card, but Tishana's Tidebinder completely shuts it down. And, you know, it is a must-answer threat. And Tidebinder, it dealt damage that game. I think Tidebinder seemed incredible, and I think we're going to see, you know, play with it in Standard up until rotation.
Yeah. Well, you know, as long as Planeswalkers exist, right? As long as there's, like, lands you can counter or all sort of other, like, trigger or abilities to counter Tishana's Tidebinder in a blue deck, it's going to be relevant.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. With the power creep, so many creatures have abilities nowadays, and so that's so many more things that is available to counter.
Especially when you consider Cavernous Souls is currently in this type of format. So blue really's got its hands sort of like tied behind his back when it comes to creatures, at least.
Yeah.
And
so here we see a Novice Inspector turn 1. So the first sort of
it's interesting. So the mono red player once again didn't have a turn 1 play. We did see that they weren't punished with this in game 1, and Feldon is quite a good card in this position, and I'm not sure. We see that Azorius Tempo is leaving up 2 mana. This could be No More Lies territory.
Yeah, so I think they know that. I think they've got the read, and so there is No More Lies in Scott's hand, but Jack also has a squee, so it's clear that Jack has sort of realized that this is likely in his hand, and so he doesn't want to give a squee away to a No More Lies.
And kind of forcing a No More Lies here, right? You kind of you're the Azorius Tempo deck would rather be countering cards like squee, right? Recursive threats is something that this deck could struggle with. But we do know that they do have exile effects with like Elspeth Smite. They have exile effects with
Smite is pretty good. I think they might have a March of Otherworldly Light in their hand as well, which is also good. And they also have a Get Lost. Yeah, so they've got some good removable here. I think they're deciding whether they want to deal with Squee or potentially deal with Feldon, and they choose to deal with Squee. I mean, Squee does get out of hand quite fast, although these maps are going to be very good for mono red.
Yeah, the ability to sort of grow their own creatures as well as filter out top deck mountain draws is something quite ideal. And was that? Oh, it was a knockout blow.
Yeah, so a really, really good card in this matchup. I think it's quite expensive nowadays after sort of being underrated for a while. It does mean that Jack gets quite a lot of value out of the Feldon.
For straight damage to Feldon is basically impulse at that point, right?
True. I agree. Now here's what you want to see as the mono red player. You want to see your opponent cracking clues. You know if they're cracking clues, they're missing something. They don't have everything they want, and their hand's not very good.
No, I can imagine there's a spell pierce in this hand. So the forge is down. And
I think just the forge is a reasonable game plan for mono red. They don't really need to do much aside from forge every turn. They potentially have some removal for key threats like it Tishana's Tidebinder.
Oh, okay. Sort of doing a bit of trading. So we do get now a map token, and there it is. There is the March of Otherworldly Light dealing with the forward before it getting out of hand. And suddenly, we're back into that similar position in game 2 where the Azorius tempo player has a much better board. The mono red player is running out of gas quite a bit.
And mono red player attempting to play Lithomatic Barrage a sorcery at the end of his opponent's turn.
Rending Volley is kind of like the other version of this card in other formats. I can't blame him for thinking that, it was also an instant speed card.
Wow. Is this just because that one time you played See the Truth for an entire FNM at instant speed?
There was... I don't believe it was me, Jay. That is an allegation.
All right, then. And here we see just sort of a back and forth land go. I'm going to play a burn spell or removal spell. But from this situation, blue-white sort of wins. They've got such a healthy life total. They've got a Wandering Emperor in their hand. They've got Mirex on the board, so they can just create loads of 1/1s. It's looking very, very good.
Yeah, and allowing that to go through, just wait, like Scott was waiting to see if there's any pumps in that position. And I believe this is, Scott's making a Mirex token. And the turn, this is establishing more damage. And in a way, Toxic is an additional race, right? In this position.
It just... I'm not sure Toxic will play that much of a role. I don't know if they will even track it. Maybe they will. But it's just almost an unbeatable position for mono red. There's just going to be so much damage coming the other way, and it's going to stack up every turn with mites. And, every time mono red draws a removal spell or something like that, it just looks so bad. It looks like they've got 2 removal spells in hand, and it looks so bad against 3 1-drops or 2 1-drops and a token.
Yeah, especially since a token is effectively free for the Azorius tempo player. So the mono red player is throwing away resources, and this is one of those things where, like, if the Azorius player is prepared, and he is prepared with the Emperor, even a top deck Fireball Drake isn't going to do it for mono red this time.
Yeah, and here we see a Monstrous Rage effectively get countered by a Wandering Emperor, and wow, the tempo has just swung so far the other way. We see mono red bring back Squee.
Nope, insufficient amount of mana for that.
It costs 4 to escape, not 3.
It's a 3 mana card, but it does cost 4 mana to do that ability. Still, very good. It's a very good mana sink for mono red as well.
Yeah, so it looks like they're Lithomatic, Barraging, Wandering Emperor, and I do like that double take from Scott because, let's be honest, everyone just treats it like Rending Volley. It's not Rending Volley. It's Fry, but sorcery speed for 1 mana. It can hit Planeswalkers.
Yeah,
pretty decent.
It is a relevant thing, but how relevant is that now in this kind of position where we know Scott's going to make another Mirex token probably at the end of this turn, where Jack doesn't... I mean, he does have a Mishra's Foundry. So that is another avenue of attack for him.
Squee is a pretty decent blocker, and Mishra's Foundry can be a decent blocker. Wandering Emperor being dead actually is kind of huge, because Wandering Emperor... I mean, I say that. I can see that there is another Wandering Emperor in Scott's hand, but Wandering Emperor can pump all of these creatures up so that these blockers don't do anything.
Yeah. Wow.
But that won't be, we're going to see that when the Wandering Emperor comes down momentarily. Or maybe Scott will take a turn off and try to exile Squee with the Emperor.
I mean, and Squeeze coming in, attack trigger activates. Like, and he just sort of just says, this is the answer. Squeeze now gone forever. And
I do think that's a bit of, mono red itis or whatever, the mono red disease of I have to attack every turn. I feel like maybe they should have maybe left Squee back there.
The thing is, like, when you consider sort of what's going on with the board state here, had Jack decided not to attack, all that would have happened was that Scott would have just made another Mirrex token. So he's kind of damned if he did, damned if he don't in that position, if you know what I mean.
I do agree, but I also think that, he gets to block one Mirrex token, so it's sort of like an even trade. And then he can get more creatures on the board, and if he gets a wide enough board, 2 or 3 creatures, those Mirrex tokens don't matter because they'll just get eaten up.
Yeah, but I mean, Scott is just going wide in this position, and I don't believe this mono red list runs End of Festivities.
Oh, that would be a fantastic card in this situation. So here we see a Shivan Devastator, and it is also going to attack. Isn't it not just lethal? From Scott?
Well, Scott currently has 4 damage.
Yeah, so Scott has 4 damage, makes 2 more mites, that's 6 damage, and then can play an Emperor for 1 more damage. I get that there is 1 blocker. Oh, sorry, no, the Emperor... Sorry, he already played the Emperor last time, my bad. Apologies.
So, what we're seeing here, we're seeing another Novice Apprentice, and immediately drawing off the clue token. So Scott is kind of looking for an answer here, but he is quite safe. I wouldn't think, why not just all-out attack? Yeah.
I think he was trying to find an Emperor or something. Some way to push through a tiny bit more damage.
Yeah. But I believe the Azorius Tempo deck has quite handily taken over this game. And mono red on 2 against 14, there isn't any card in the standard format that will grow that Drake to deal 14 damage.
Yeah, funny enough, next turn, I believe that there's going to be an all-out attack from Scott. We're going to see a Witch Stalker Frenzy from Jack, plus block with the Shivan Devastator, and then also attempt to activate Mishra's Foundry, and I believe that is going to get Tishana's Tidebinded.
It's almost as if you've seen all the cards in the hand.
I know.
I mean,
see it into the future.
It might not even get to that, to be fair. They're doing some of the calculations. Now, technically, Scott is at 2. It's not been updated yet. So,
I believe
no matter how you swing this...
They're primarily keeping track of their live totals on paper, so we can be certain that they are accurate, just not always reflected on the phone.
And another Mirrex token comes in, and I mean,
we made fun of Mirrex a little bit in that first game because I think Scott was hurting a little bit for lands.
Yeah.
But Mirrex has been so good.
Yeah, and then Mirrex is a very good card in the grindy game, and this is kind of where Standard feels a lot more like you can do more things in more turns. The game doesn't end as quickly. Cards like Mirrex is perfect in a format where you kind of want to grind it out. And I think the Azorius deck strategy was towards being more grindy, kind of dealing with threats as they come, and then eventually then taking over the game on the swing back. Which Mono Red just, after sideboard, just couldn't deal with in that position. So very well played by Scott. Very well played by Jack.
You maybe think that Jack should have mulliganed harder, maybe game 3, for a more aggressive start. No 1-drop is not always the most ideal of things. Yeah,
and, but, hey, the decision was made. we saw that in game 1, having a 1-drop wasn't necessary. So Jack may have thought, oh, I'll just carry on plan as normal. And he may have eventually been able to draw into more action, but as we saw there, a lot of lands again. And Scott just had all the answers this time. So once again, well played to Scott, well played to Jack. And that ends another standard game in this video. Thank you very much for watching this. I've been John, this is my partner Jay. Thank you.